Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome to another episode of This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and today we are continuing on with TEOTWAWKI Revisited, and this will be part 2. But before I begin, to listen to TEOTWAWKI Revisited Part 1, go to talkingaboutthисandthat.wordpress.com and click on the podcast link. Now, in yesterday's episode, we looked at Mark Carney's speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, on the New World Order, talking about middle powers banding together to work together. It turned into a, hey, we have the answer, join us. But he also talked about some terms. And before I get into the next thing, let's look at these terms. Now, I'm going to say I'm lazy. I'm a caregiver. I end up with something of a busy schedule. So I'm not running around to a lot of websites trying to find a lot of definitions. And though I'm not in love with AI, I will say AI is doing one thing that's making things a little easier. Maybe it does this massive search and summary. So if I want to look up some definitions, I'll actually get statements. And I'm using this. So he uses terms in his speech. One of them is pluralistic. These are all going to good old Google and asking, what is this, what is this, what is this? Pluralistic describes a system, society, or approach that accepts and incorporates diverse groups, beliefs, ideas, or principles, advocating for their coexistence and participation rather than assimilation or dominance by one single view. Promoting understanding and dialogue across differences. It can apply to politics, as in multiple parties, as if we had Republican, Democrat, and Independent. That wouldn't be bipartisan. That would be tripartisan, but that wouldn't be a single party either, so it would be pluralistic. Just an example. In culture, as in diverse traditions, Native American, Hispanic, Afro-American, or Black, and white liberalistic, white conservative, Jewish, Christian, traditions, Irish. Think of the immigrants that made America what it is today, a melting pot. They all come from countries with traditions. They all brought their traditions over the border. German, Irish, Deutsch, the Dutch, all of these. Go to the Appalachians, listen to the music, and find the traditions. Look at the Amish and consider their tradition. They're not from a colonial America. They're from somewhere else, but they brought their belief system with them. So that's also pluralistic. Coexisting faiths, or even in learning, varied approaches and methods to learning. Okay, then I looked at plurilateral trade. Plurilateral trade refers to trade agreements between more than two countries, but fewer than all members of a large body like the World Trade Organization, WTO, often focusing on specific sectors or issues where universal consensus is difficult, allowing, quote-unquote, like-minded nations to advance liberalization as seen with agreements like the Information Technology Agreement, ITA, or discussions on e-commerce. These arrangements provide a flexible way to overcome stalemate in broader multilateral talk, though they risk fragmenting the system or excluding developing nations. Then he talks about variable geometry. That term came up. Biden and Blinken, the Secretary of State and the President, talked about something called variable geometric diplomacy, I think, but it's variable geometry. Now, that's actually a mathematical term, and it's funny because this is what AI gives us. Variable geometry refers to systems or structures that can change their physical shape or operational characteristics to adapt to different conditions. Commonly used in aviation as swing wings to optimize aerodynamics, or in engineering, variable geometry turbochargers to improve engine efficiency. It also describes, and this is where we want to go, flexible political economic, or international integration where participants move at different speeds or cooperate on specific issues rather than all policies. Now, I'm going to say something here. A lot of this has got problems. When you start doing this, you don't have rules. You have this flexible thing. It's just moving along. If you don't have rules that are rigid, that are enforced, and how I wish the UN were listening to me because they're not enforcing the rules. Yes, we went into another UN member nation and we took their leader. Doesn't matter why. Doesn't matter if they were doesn't matter if that person is the drug lord and is specifically sending airdrops of packets of something that is killing our babies and killing our mothers and killing our fathers, people who never thought they would ever do drugs, pick it up and go, what is this? And open it. And the contents just go poof into their face and they die. And we say, that man, Mr. Maduro, that man, see, he sent those packets. By the way, this is hypothetical. This is not reality. Thank you. That man, he sent these packets. See what he did? See what he did? We need to haul him into America, and we need to make him, he's got to be convicted for murder, and then he needs to be taken out back and shot by firing squad. Yes, 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 yes. That does not matter, because until Maduro steps his pinky toes onto our soil, he's not here, and we cannot go after him. We broke the rules, but so far, nobody is doing anything to us. We're getting away with stuff that we shouldn't get away with. See, rules are only useful if they get enforced. If they're not being enforced, then who cares? You have anarchy, you have chaos. All right, so the next term, values-based reality. Values-based reality is a lifestyle or framework where actions and decisions are guided by core personal principles rather than external pressures, fostering authenticity, purpose, and resilience. It involves defining, prioritizing, and enacting values to navigate life's challenges. This approach leads to deeper fulfillment by prioritizing what truly matters. Humanism is a values-based reality. You decide, based on your knowledge, what you believe to be good and bad. That's basically what this is saying. Actions and decisions are guided by core personal principles rather than external pressures. External pressures would be law and order, or God. I mean, there's an external pressure. Geez, Lou. All right, values-based policy is a strategy where fundamental ethical, moral, or societal principles like justice, equity, integrity, or sustainability guide decision-making, moving beyond purely economic or technical factors to ensure actions reflect core beliefs and long-term well-being. Creating a framework for culture, governance, or care, it ensures policies align with desired societal outcomes, influencing everything from corporate culture, honesty, teamwork, to public services, health, environmental protection. Problem is, the decisions are based on core personal principles. What if your core personal principles are not ethical? They are amoral. They are not just, and they are certainly not equitable. There is no integrity, and what you do is unsustainable. You have no honesty, and you're not interested in teamwork. All of this falls apart because you don't have rules on books that state this is the way it's going to be done. You will conform to these rules or you're out. The values-based reality, values-based policy assumes that all the players actually care, that they have basic good ethics, good morals. They don't have to be godly, they just have to be goodly. That there's going to be a sense of justice and equity and integrity and honesty. Notice I'm leaving out sustainability and teamwork, because you could be a dictator that does not believe in teamwork and who can make your own sustainability, but you don't have to think in terms of ethically good or ethically moral and care for anybody else, and you don't have to be just, you don't have to be equitable, and you don't have to have integrity. You could be a dictator that ends up killing your own people because they don't like you. By the way, communism tends to be like that because it's how do I get the people to keep me in office? If they're afraid they're going to die, they'll keep putting up their little signs because they don't want to be shot. All revolutions are bloody and lives are lost. All right, multilateral institutions. Multilateral institutions are organizations formed by 3 or more countries. Well, it's all right, so they're pluralistic. They're pluralistic. Anyway, 3 or more countries to address shared global or regional challenges such as peace, trade, health, or development by facilitating cooperation, setting standards, pooling resources, and creating frameworks for collective action, with key examples including the UN, World Bank, IMF, and WTO. They provide platforms for diplomacy, consensus building, and collaborative governance, helping manage rivalries and promote shared interests through agreed upon rules and joint efforts. Okay, through agreed upon rules. But values-based assumes the goodness of the individual because it's an internal. You're going to make the rules internally. You yourself, your views. So, all right, rules-based is basically that, rules-based. All right, so parlaypolicy.com/post/the-rules-based-international-order-explained. That's the website, and it says the rules international order explained. It's got its little picture. It's got a lady signing the UN Charter. There we go. So I'm simply going to read this. The term rules-based international order has become commonplace in government, states, and joint communique. For many, the corresponding message is that it is necessary to reinforce that order to preserve the conditions needed for peace and prosperity. Others argue that the rules-based international order is nothing more than a tool for a select group of countries to advance their own hegemonic or exploitative ambitions. The one commonality between the two sides that present those arguments is that neither tends to define what rules-based international order really is or why it matters. That's why I'm using this site, because these people are at least explaining what it is. For those seeking to manage conflict, to advance relationships between nations, or simply to understand the state of global affairs, the definition of rules-based international order is important. It is neither some nebulous concept without practical effects, nor is it some oligarchical construct meant to impose, quote-unquote, rules for thee but not for me. The rules-based international order as we know it today is predicated on a system of laws, rules, and norms, and has been underpinned underpinned international interactions since its formal establishment in 1945. And that date is important because that was the ending of the last World War. If you don't know your history, go find out. Whether its overall influence is positive or negative continues to be predicated on the actions of the members of the international community. But one cannot influence what one does not fully understand. The premise of this is to make an explanation. Understanding the global ecosystem. Fundamentally, there's a global ecosystem that binds together individual nation states. Now, full stop. As the United States of America, Americans ought to have an instant understanding of this because it's called the United Nations. The states under our Constitution in the Articles of Confederacy became bound together. 13 colonies. As it expands, that particular document had to be redone to form the Constitution. The Articles of Confederacy is we people are now one people, and we'll get back to you as soon as we figure out how we're going to be one people. A Constitution is the answer to we'll get back to you when we figure out how we're going to be one people. The Constitution laid out how the Confederacy, which I think is hilarious because, we're the Confederate States and y'all are the Union States. And Union and Confederation, turns out, in the language of the forefathers, is the same thing. Hilarious. But the Constitution is how we, as states, and I'm only addressing the lower 48 because we're a contiguous whole, from below Canada to the water, basically, on almost all sides to the bottom of Texas, in that one area where we land bridge into the southern continent. You cannot leave Mexico out of this because Mexico's kind of the divide between north and south and is part of the land bridge. So, I mean, Anyway, so we have individual nation states. Reading on, what happens in one corner of the world can have significant and unanticipated impacts that reach the ends of the earth. Full stop. You think? Right now, what we are doing in this nation state, is literally impacting all of the other nation states of the UN. And it's challenging their commitment to their rules base. And Canada just challenged them to forget about it. Don't do this because you're not going to, but they should. I'm going to put this out here. I put this out on some social media to certain people. What if for 90 days all of the other member nations economically pulled out of the stock market, dumped their stocks, and immediately agreed with corporations within their own community so they don't lose? This is investors, not U.S., to be able to make the same buys into stocks in their areas, so they can keep their portfolios and not fall apart. See, because when you pull out of stocks, you do lose your portfolio. So if you had a heavy American stock portfolio and you're from Greenland, oh God, you're kind of going to be shooting yourself in the foot. But if, as a Greenlander, you go to other companies and say, hey, I'm pulling out of this, but I don't have the money to buy enough to keep my portfolio afloat from everybody else, can you cut me a break? And these other entities say, yeah, sure, no, you're going to give it to the U.S. We don't love what they're doing. Sure, we'll cut you a break. Somehow they managed to stay afloat. But the issue is they pulled out of us. If they all did it, the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, oh, that would be bad. But wait, I want to go further. A communication to cell phones of our tourists from overseas doing a recall, asking for and offering refunds for cruises, tourism by airlines, and by ship and by plane, because basically there's no other way to get here. I mean, you're going to drive over here from across the ocean? That I want to see. With refunds, because, I mean, these people are going to be out, and they are instantly called to leave America. They're refunded. Whatever bills are there, that at least gets paid because it's lawful. It's a debt. Just, fine. Meanwhile, overseas, our people are now asked by every hotel and travel agency to please pack, and we will refund you your money that you spent here at our hotels. So there's going to be some losses, but we're going to help you to get on a plane and go home. We will at least be nice and send you back to the United States. All businesses, all tourism. About the only line that might be drawn is if someone is in a surgery, someone is in recovery. But as soon as you are able to be put on a plane and sent back home, you're out. I only draw the line at healthcare, because this is now a person's life could be taken if you bounce them. Good God. But if they have not gone into surgery yet, doesn't matter. They might have to be sent home without the surgery. That might end their life. All right. Moreover, I'm not done. All of our trade, say companies through Amazon, order stock, and all of a sudden they get a reply saying, we're refunding your money. We cannot ship to you. Our government has asked us to not do business with you per UN charter rules for 90 days. The money does come back and nothing is sent to us. All shipping stop. Doesn't matter. Do you know how many places are going to get impacted immediately? This is literally shutting the United States out of the global economic system. And it probably take some time to queue this up, and so that the nations around us in the UN protect themselves from overt catastrophic loss, as they at least do the right thing and say, you didn't ask for this, but your nation has done something that asks us as nations to stop dealing with you for 90 days. So here's your money back. Now please leave. We will facilitate you getting on a plane, and you're going to have your bills getting back because the states will order it. And I'm not done yet. All our military interests in all our UN countries, we are asked to leave. And if we then say, well, what about our interests? We say, we the people say, we get it. This is a 90-day thing. Your interests could be overrun. So we will have UN peacekeeping forces protecting your interests for 90 days. But you cannot make profit on those interests. We will just simply be a bookmark, but you can't read the book. Your place is held for 90 days. That's just 90 days. Economic sanctions can go on for years and years and years and years and years because a country is not returning back to and fixing their problem with regard to the rules. Okay? Now we are sent home and the international community closes borders to us. They may actually bounce all people from the United States who are seeking some form of immigration to another nation because they are Americans. All passports are flagged and people coming in are asked to go back to the airport, replane, and leave. Denied entry. Every UN nation for 90 days. I want my listener to think about the catastrophic economic impact that would go on for months. And then you make sure that UN gets hold of social media and starts stating, this is what we have asked our member nations to do because the United States broke the Charter at tick, 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 whatever the ticks are, wherever they broke it. We are enforcing our rules against you. You will not behave in this manner in the UN, or you can choose to leave it. If you choose to leave the UN, all trade ends. Watch the American people get hold of that. They'll hate it, but you know what they'll also do? They'll say, oh my giddy aunt, what can we do to get anybody in power that will play by these people's rules because I want my possets and comforts off of Amazon. Doggone it, I want it. You mean I don't get? That could mean medicines that don't get in. People die. That's right. 90 days. I've said it. Now, understanding the global ecosystem, fundamentally there is a global ecosystem that binds together individual nation states. What happens in one corner of the world can have significant and unanticipated impacts that reach to the ends of the earth. That was not always the case, but globalization has changed this, particularly in the realms of economy and security. Take, for example, an iPhone. Between the parts design, technology, manufacturing, and logistics, it requires a total of 43 countries to produce a single iPhone. What that means is that what happens in one of these countries will have at least a modicum of effect in the other 42. And that does not even consider the retailers or consumers of that product across the globe. That's right. Your iPhones are under threat. If I were to have done what I just said, iPhone manufacturing would end overnight. We can't take the load. It goes on. In terms of security, Russia's invasion of Ukraine offers a clear demonstration of how one country's aggression can have global effects. In addition to the material and financial costs countries have to accept to bolster Ukraine's survival, the international community has faced the specter of nuclear disaster, an impending food security crisis, disruptions to supply chains, rising costs for gas and oil, impacts to market values of goods, and inflammation across multiple continents. All these impacts stem from a single government's decision to initiate hostilities against its neighbor, like we did against Venezuela. See, this is an article that predates what we just did. So I'm switching this from Russia and Ukraine to America and Venezuela. There we go. It continues. There is also no shortage of economic crisis to illustrate the world's interconnectedness. The international community endured the 1970s oil shocks and the collapse of the so-called, quote-unquote, petrodollar. The Asian financial crisis of the late 1990s had impacts across the globe, as did the Lehman shock of 2008. With the state of global trade, financial markets, and logistics, the international community is in it together for better or worse. Recognition of the need for a rules-based order to preserve international stability is not new. While there are historical examples like the Treaty of Westphalia in the context of the modern era, governments across the globe recognized it in the 1910s as the Great War spanned from the trenches of Europe to the waters of the Pacific. When the shooting stopped, members of the international community sought to create a new order through the establishment of the League of Nations. That became the UN. The League of Nations is the backbone for the United Nations. However, I said that, and now this says, however, the League of Nations failed, and the world plunged once again into World War. While the fighting raged on, diplomats worked simultaneously to design a new international system. This time, the goal remained grounded in the complex reality of international politics, focusing on just a few core principles, such as a collective security, fair access to global commons, and universal human rights. As Swedish diplomat Dag Hammarskjöld once stated, the goal was not to, quote-unquote, take mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. The product of this effort was the United Nations, and it came into being since World War II ended. What underpins the rules-based international order? There's no shortage of international laws, rules, and norms, as well as organizations that oversee them. But since 1945, it has all centered on the United Nations and its charter. 193 countries have acceded to the UN Charter. Acceded, come into, secede, leave. Those are terms. Secession from the Union, accession to the Union. Alaska acceded to the Union when it was bought by us. But I don't know. Will Minnesota decide it wants to secede from the Union after what's been going on there? Point in case that's just examples. All right. Countries have acceded to the UN Charter as member states, declaring their wish to be part of a community of nations. As part of the deal, they are obliged to follow the fundamental principles and provisions that extend from that charter. By the way, we're a member. While there are many different things that inform international laws, rules, and norms, particularly by functional area, the core of it may be broken down into the following: the UN Charter, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UN Security Council Resolution, UN General Assembly Resolution, international conventions as in the Geneva Conventions, and that has to do with war, how it is fought. Treaties, as in Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is how we got the Ukraine to give up its protection. Seems as though nukes equals protection, because nobody wants to push the button. They remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that wasn't nuclear. That was atomic. That was nuclear's little brother in diapers. International agreements, non-treaty level ceasefire agreements, framework agreements, joint declarations, etc. This is all part of it. International court or tribunal rulings. The 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Tribunal ruling, and there was one. It's not exhaustive, which in part contributes to some confusion over the rules-based international order. After all, there's no single tome that one can reference that clearly lays out every law, rule, and norm. Full stop. And that's because this is nation. Our Constitution is its mini tome that lays out every rule, every law, and every norm for a set of states that have come into a confederacy, a union, to consent to dwell together as a nation. But that is a nation. These are nations consenting to come together as a global community. There is a difference. There are limits to what you can do in this case. Complicating matters is that each of the things listed above have varying levels of binding influence or effect. Because there's no overarching enforcement authority, it is incumbent upon the members of the international community themselves to work together in establishing the rules and upholding them. Full stop. Canada said this is bunk because we're not enforcing it against the United States that is trying to make a hegemonial bid for dominance. Spheres of influence. We get the whole Western hemisphere, whereas China gets theirs and Russia gets theirs. Why Russia and China? Why? This goes back to the Second World War. China and Russia are Axis powers. We are allied powers. Why are we going together? And then there's the Board of Peace that Putin is a part of. Canada decided she wanted to be a part of it, and Trump said no, but he said yes to Putin. Question mark? That's something that's not in the news. This new Board of Peace that he's a head of, and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, is also a part of, as in when Trump is pulled, Kushner takes over. That's the plan. Okay, this is why so many governments talk about reinforcing the rules-based international order. It's their responsibility to mitigate threats to the global ecosystem that can negatively impact countries across the world, like tariffs. The utility of the rules-based international order. Given its inherent shortcomings, what then is the utility of the rules-based international order? Fundamentally, it comes down to 4 core points. 1. It offers a system for interstate interaction. The system that is predicated on international laws, rules, and norms is both informative and instructive in how the people of the world engage one another. History has demonstrated that its absence creates space for conflict and chaos until people realize once again that there must be boundaries for interactions, like we shouldn't be invading Venezuela even if we think they're sending drug packets to kill everybody. Remember, that's hypothetical. That's not a reality, all right? But we should not have gone into Venezuela with or without congressional approval. The without congressional approval just means we violated our Constitution. The fact that we did it at all means we violated the UN Charter. Click, click, one more, and we might hit the round in the chamber and shoot ourselves in the economic face. This was the lesson twice learned through world wars. Problem is, that was then and this is now, and they don't understand that a world war of words is already in progress. There's very precious little to stop the words from becoming true bullets. Because we are so interactive, the next world war will be something to write home about. Now, 2, this system establishes rule sets. Rules have been a fundamental feature of human existence since time immemorial, be it in commandments, laws, or codes. The challenge has always been applying rules to bigger and more diverse groups, like the United States. The international system as it exists today seeks to present universal rules applicable to all members of the global community. And it ranges from things as broad as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Full stop. ICE anybody? They're in violation of human rights. The way that we're doing our business to do immigration enforcement is a violation of human rights against the immigrants and the citizens. There's the black guy that was shot and the white girl that was shot. He was black and she was a lesbian. That means we haven't shot a Christian yet. Wait for it. Sooner or later, some poor little old lady is going to get shot, and we're going to find out that she was an upstanding Christian and a member of the church, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then it's going to matter. For shame. It mattered when anybody started using concentration camp to house immigration violators. Yes, it is civil on the one hand when you get caught in country without permission. It's federal if you get caught twice. So there is a criminality to it, but it's not. It's a different kind of crime, but it is crime. It is a violation of the law. Now, if you're a criminal actor in our state and are found to be also undocumented, as in not processed, as in you got in and nobody knows you're here, so you are considered here illegally, that's a whole nother nest of hornets. All right, so the international system as it exists today seeks to present universal rules applicable to all members of the global community, and it ranges from things as broad as Universal Declaration of Human Rights to something as specific as protocols for responding to distress signals at sea. This is important not only for guiding behaviors, but for settling expectations that help mitigate the risk of accidental incidents, misinterpretation, or miscalculation. 3. The rules-based international order presents mechanisms for updating and amending rule sets, just like our Constitution presents mechanisms for updating and amending it. As the world constantly evolves, so does the rules-based international order, and that is by design. To which I add, and so does our Constitution as our nation moves forward in time. Things become outdated and need to be removed and no longer enforced. New things need to be amended in to protect people or to enforce laws that now become necessary because of fill in the blank. The UN Charter specifically provides for the international community to address changing requirements, which might be codified through new or amended treaties, conventions, statutes, resolutions, or other instruments. The methodology is what they're talking about. How do you do it? What this means is that the international community has a means for addressing potential sources of conflict or environmental, social, or economic problems before they manifest into something worse, like us doing what we're doing right now. 4. The rules-based international order offers mechanisms for addressing violations of the rule sets. Despite its limitations, the rules-based international order does offer options for responding to violations of the rule set. There have been collective security mandates provided by the UN Secretary Council in response to unilateral aggressions, such as Korea in 1950 and Kuwait in 1991. And the UN resolutions and rulings from associated organizations have provided the basis for other punitive measures such as sanctions, something that has not been done against us yet. Ultimately, the rules-based international order is a quote-unquote pay-to-play system, meaning that member states violate the rules at risk of losing the benefits that come from being part of the global community. If you do something that violates your driver's license, you can have that privilege taken away. And if you're caught operating a vehicle without the privilege to, you can go before the judge and get, I don't know, fined, jail time, shot? Honestly, I don't know. But it's your driver's license business is a pay to play. If you don't abide by the rules of the road, or you don't pay your tickets or whatever, you can end up with a suspended license. If you drive on that, you can end up with your license privilege, your driving privileges revoked for a period of time. If you drive on that, you can end up with them permanently revoked. If you continue to drive on that, you're breaking the law and they can put you in handcuffs and throw you in jail. Now you don't have any freedoms, but you will get 3 squares if you survive. As with any system, the rules-based international order is imperfect. There is no law that has gone unchallenged, rule that has gone unbroken, or norm that has been unobserved. There is no overarching enforcement authority to oversee the implementation of these laws, rules, and norms, and yet there is still utility for in an otherwise anarchic world. The system established in 1945 anchors the international community against the chaos of war, disaster, violence, and crime. This is why it exists and why it matters. So now I'm going to go into this in our next episode of This and that would be to briefly look at the actual UN. So until then,